In the southwestern corner of the state of Washington towers a sleeping giant. Set in a landscape of soaring forests, thundering waterfalls, and peaceful streams, it has been called the very soul of the Northwest. But the giant sleeps uneasily. Beneath its snowy dome lies an awesome power, unsurpassed by any other force on Earth. The mountain is Rainier, and this is the story of its power and its place. Mount Rainier is clearly the most impressive feature in the park. The mountain itself sits on more than 1/4 of the park's 368 square miles. On a clear day, Rainier's ethereal, otherworldly presence can be seen looming above the skyline of Seattle, some 60 miles away. In 1792, Captain George Vancouver of the British Royal Navy anchored his Admiral Peter Rainier. At 14,411 feet, Rainier towers almost 8,000 feet above the other peaks of the Cascade Range and is the 5th highest mountain in the continental United States. Mount Rainier's massive, seemingly serene presence, volcano, a volatile mixture of explosive heat and molten lava deep in the belly of the Earth. The great irony of Mount Rainier is that its volcanic character is masked beneath a blanket of ice. Glaciers cling to the summit and slopes of the mountain, a river of ice that covers 35 square miles, the largest year-round mass of ice anywhere in the United States, except Alaska. In its imposing posture, with its lofty summit often obscured by clouds, Mount Rainier seems immutable and timeless. So it is all the more surprising that the mountain is a relative youngster in terms of geologic time. In fact, Mount Rainier was formed by volcanic activity that started only about 1 million years ago. The raw material for the mountain was created. Since then, this volcanic mass has been continually shaped and sculpted by glaciers, a process that continues today. Rainier is one link in a chain of volcanoes that dominates the Cascade Range. In the 1980s, additional monitoring stations were installed on Mount Rainier to provide. Although there have been no volcanic eruptions for almost 100 years, widespread geothermal activity attests to the power that still percolates beneath the mountain. The most visible power on the mountain, however, is the slow, inexorable march and retreat of the peak's massive glaciers. Glaciers are formed where the snowpack accumulates, and its sheer weight compresses the snow into dense ice. Park visitors are often surprised by the dark, dirty look of glaciers. Their sooty appearance is due to the residue from the rocks and boulders that glaciers quarry from the landscape as they move. In fact, glaciers derive much of their carving power from this material. As boulders are entombed in the glacier, they act as sharpened blades and oversized chisels that dislodge other abrasive material. This rock debris is eventually transported and the glacier recedes. Like a footprint in wet cement, they are a kind of signature that marks the glacier's farthest advance. At its downhill terminus, where a glacier encounters warmer conditions, there is a protrusion called a snout. These snouts can reach heights of 80 feet or more, giving the glacier an almost haughty appearance. Another common glacial feature is called a crevasse, a deep fissure in the glacier's surface. These frightening, seemingly bottomless gashes in the ice are sobering reminders of the danger and uncertainties that these living rivers of ice can pose. Nisqually is one of the most accessible and intriguing glaciers in the park. This time-lapse sequence shows movements of the glacier over a period of a single summer. After retreating for more than a century, in the mid-1970s, Nisqually executed a remarkable turnabout that intrigued many experts. It reversed its direction and began to advance slowly. For the moment, it seems to have reached an equilibrium and come to a standstill. In Rainier, twin forces, volcanic heat and glacial cold, create yet another powerful phenomena. The volcanic fire inside the mountain constantly warms the fields of ice on the surface. This collision of opposites sometimes creates a natural event of staggering destructive potential. Jökulhlaups, an Icelandic term meaning glacial outburst flood, are flash floods that burst forth when the glaciers melt very rapidly. As waters race down the mountain, they become a devastating wave of ice, trees, mud, rocks, and boulders that can flatten anything in its path.
And we heard this roar. It sounded like a freight train, and we just bombed down the trail. We got right to the suspension bridges. The flow was coming down. It had started to go under the bridge already, and it wasn't wet. It was dry. It was mounds and mounds of like liquid dirt, but it wasn't, no moisture, just dust. And big boulders as big as a car, 8-10 feet around, floating right on top. And you can see the watermark 60 feet up from the creek bed underneath the bridge. And it just overflowed the whole valley.
Jökulhlaups can travel downhill at speeds of 10 miles an hour or more and have been known to transport boulders the size of a small truck. Since the late 1960s, South Tahoma Glacier has been the source of a series of powerfully destructive Jökulhlaups. This former picnic area has been closed to visitors since July 1988, when it was engulfed by massive mud flows that extended more than 5 miles. But the awesome power of Rainier's complex geological forces is only one aspect of the park's grandeur and mystique. Below Rainier's imperial summit lie landscapes of breathtaking beauty, a profusion of flora and fauna, and a variety of sights, sounds, and experiences that make the entire park a national treasure. The lush forests of the lowlands are the tranquil domain of the western red cedar, western hemlock, and Douglas fir. These noble trees can grow more than 250 feet high. Varied shrubs, ferns, and mosses carpet the moist, shady forest floor. Not far from the rich lowland forests is Longmire, site of an old mineral springs resort. It is named for James Longmire, who helped to pioneer a route across the Cascades. He was one of the homesteaders among a wave of immigrants who made their way to Western Washington in the latter part of the 19th century. This cabin, built by James Longmire's son, Elkane, in 1888, is the oldest man-made structure in the park. The road that leads from Longmire to the park's higher elevations was one of the first roads built in the national park. President William Howard Taft made the inaugural ride on it in 1911. Because the road was still rough and muddy, teams of horses were hidden along the way. They would emerge from the trees and pull the car over the worst spots, much to the amusement of the president. At elevations above 3,500 feet, the forests are noticeably less dense and the trees considerably smaller than in the lowlands. This change is the result of harsher conditions here: cold temperatures, strong winds, and a short growing season. The sound and visual delight of falling water is one of the great joys of Rainier. The elegant dance of water over rock is a constant reminder that Rainier is, after all, part of the mountain range of falling water, the Cascades. Perhaps the park's most spectacular cascade is Comet Falls, plunging 320 feet over solid rock terraces. East of Comet Falls is one of the most beautiful areas in the park, aptly called Paradise. Here, at more than 5,000 feet, stands of mountain hemlock and subalpine fir give way to spectacular alpine meadows. The breathtaking beauty of this landscape makes it the most visited area of the park. Wife Martha arrived in 1885. She was so moved by the magnificent vistas that she said, "It looks just like paradise." No one disagreed, and the name stuck. By 1896, stagecoach runs were bringing more and more visitors to Paradise, as well as to other areas of Mount Rainier. The rapid influx sparked an effort to preserve this remarkable wilderness. Local newspapers, supported by scientific and conservation organizations, led a concerted lobby for the creation of a national park. On March 2, 1899, President William McKinley signed a bill that established Mount Rainier as the country's 5th national park. Today, Paradise has never looked better. Luminous hillsides of blue lupin, blushing fields of Indian paintbrush, and meadows awash in white Sitka valerian. But if summer in Paradise is intoxicating to the senses, it's also tantalizingly brief. For most of the year, the park is blanketed with snow. Rainier's long winters make the park an ideal retreat for people interested in snowbound recreation. And with the help of a knowledgeable national park ranger, a winter in Rainier also affords a unique learning experience for young people.
Hi, welcome to Mount Rainier National Park. My name is Ron Warfield. I'm the Assistant Chief Park Naturalist here. I've been doing snowshoe walks now for almost 20 years. We're going to be looking at where snow comes from. In a school environment, students do not get a wilderness experience. So we bring the kids up here in groups to give them that wilderness experience that is fast becoming extinct in our culture, and try to give them the experience of nature in the environment under nature's terms, with the wind, with the rain, with the snow. You're standing in a place where the world record snowfall was set in the winter of 1971 and 72. Guess how many inches fell that winter? Any ideas?
93 feet.
93 feet. That's 1,122 inches.
Is that right?
93 feet would be deep enough if it was all sitting on the ground and not packed down to bury all of these trees that you see around us. Most of these trees are less than 100 feet tall. It's particularly important for this generation to be in the wilderness because this may be the last generation in which we have wilderness as we know it. So this next generation has the responsibility to save what's left. And it's our generation's responsibility to show them how to do that. Look at this. Remember I was telling you about the cone and the cone scales? All of these fit together like little kernels on a corn cob. Just, you would eat them off in spirals, if you're weird like I am. Well, that's the same way the wind blows those off, and then those little seeds blow out of there, and that becomes the food then for the ptarmigans and the snowshoe hares. Okay. Many of the kids are not used to using their physical abilities to the limit. They start out by throwing snowballs and running around. They're using their full capacity of their lungs and the full capacity of their legs to use that oxygen that their lungs are providing. We're at a higher altitude here too, of course, so that there's not as much oxygen as they're used to breathing. And by the time they're finished with the experience, they're exhausted. So that's an experience that most of them have not yet had, sitting in a classroom experience. Okay. Joy with the human beings is in sharing those wild, natural experiences. That, to me, is the real meaning of all of this, sharing that with people, but doing it in such a way that we don't destroy the very thing we've come to enjoy and try to understand.
When the long winter finally gives way to spring, Rainier's diverse wonders become more accessible to visitors. Like many of our national parks, Rainier offers an excellent trail system that encourages visitors to experience the wilderness environment up close. The heart of Mount Rainier's complex of trails is the Wonderland Trail, a 93-mile circuit around the base of Mount Rainier. Though Rainier is the most commanding feature of the park, there are other areas where the mountain's dominance recedes. One of these is Box Canyon, a narrow river gorge more than 100 feet deep and only 15 to 30 feet wide. And for musical entertainment, any number of songbirds will step forward to sing a solo. More than 140 species of birds have been identified at Mount Rainier. Personality types range from playful ravens to camp-robbing gray jays. Few campsite burglars dress more appropriately than the raccoon. These masked marauders usually hide near lakes or streams. For years, raccoons were thought to be fastidious eaters because of their habit of dipping food in water before eating. Other naturalists have speculated that raccoons lack salivary glands and wet their food in order to swallow it more easily. The park is also home to some of nature's most impressive predators. Cougars, also called mountain lions, feed primarily on deer and elk and live along the subalpine meadows and mountain ridges. A stealthy, secretive mammal, the cougar is rarely seen in the park. The bobcat is the most common wildcat in the United States. Not usually known for its prowess as a swimmer, this cat seems to manage quite well with the feline version of the dog paddle. In the southeastern section of the park, the Ohanapikosh Valley is renowned for the serene beauty and stately magnificence of its old-growth forests. Old growth refers to ecosystems dominated by indigenous large conifers at least 250 years old. Such forests are characterized by multi-layered vegetation and by a profusion of both standing live trees and fallen dead trees. Old-growth forests are fast becoming an endangered resource in this country. These towering giants in the grove of the patriarchs, hemlocks, Douglas firs, and cedars, are nearly 1,000 years old. The presence of such ancient and impressive trees inspires an appreciation of the timeless web of life in the wilderness. North of the old-growth forests is the scenic White River Valley. Geologists theorize that some 5,800 years ago, the summit of Mount Rainier collapsed, creating one of the largest known mudflows on Earth. The furious onslaught of mud and debris engulfed this placid valley and another 100 square miles of lowlands, all the way to Puget Sound. Just north of the White River Valley, Sunrise Point offers what many consider the most spectacular view of Mount Rainier in the park. Northeast of the mountain, the Sunrise area receives much less precipitation than other parts of the park. As a result, this alpine meadow is dominated by forms of vegetation that require less moisture, such as the whitebark pine. Sunrise also affords an excellent view of Emmons Glacier, the largest glacier in the continental United States. This enormous river of ice covers more than 4 square miles of the mountain's surface. It has been estimated that the glacier contains almost 24 billion cubic feet of ice. Perhaps the ultimate park experience in Rainier is a climb to the summit, for to respond to the call of the wilderness. Today, the climb can be accomplished by almost anyone, provided he or she is in good physical condition and has a real taste for adventure.
Today we're going to cover an awful lot of things. One of the most important ones is probably how to use this ice axe. Everybody's been carrying it for the last half an hour or so to get out to the workout area.
For the inexperienced climber, the 2-day, 18-mile trek up and back down the mountain is preceded by a 1-day training course at the Paradise Climbing School. Here, experienced instructors familiarize students with basic climbing techniques.
The chances of falling this way are pretty slim, but should it occur, you want to know how to handle it. Look uphill, Erica. You want to plant that ice axe as far up the hill as you can and look at the head of the axe. Great, good job. Excellent stop. Basically what we're looking at today, folks, is about a 4 to 5 hour climb up to Camp Muir.
The following morning, the group assembles to begin the ascent.
We've received a radio call from Camp Muir just about a half an hour ago, and the weather report is winds are gusting 40 to 50 miles an hour at Camp Muir. The cloud layer is in at about 8,500 feet, so it looks like we're going to be in it for a while. Hopefully we'll punch through and be looking over the tops of these clouds. Okay, well, if we're all set, let's shoulder the packs and head on up.
As the climbers begin, they are following in the footsteps of some earlier adventurers. After several attempts on the summit in the 1850s and 60s fell short of the goal, the first successful climb was made by Hazard Stevens and Philemon Beecher Van Trump in 1870. They were led to the base of the peak by a Yakima Indian named Sluiskin, but he refused to continue the climb. He instead offered this warning.
Listen to me. Your plan to climb to Houma is all foolishness. No one can do it and live.
Stevens and Van Trump pressed on to become the first to carve their names into history. The first day's climb ends at Camp Muir, which affords breathtaking views of other peaks in the Cascade Range to the south.
Peter, is that Adams over there?
That is correct. Yeah, that's Adams just poking above the clouds.
And where's St. Helens?
St. Helens is actually obscured. The cloud layer is a little bit high for us to get a look at Mount St. Helens.
The climbers make an early camp in preparation for their pre-dawn assault on the summit. Camp Muir has long been a way station for climbers of Mount Rainier. In 1890, schoolteacher and journalist Fay Fuller stayed here the night before she became the first woman to reach the summit. She later wrote of her experience.
Now I am satisfied. I accomplished what I have always dreamed of and feared impossible.
The final climb to the summit begins in the chilly pre-dawn hours. An early departure is needed to assure enough time to reach the top and still be able to complete the day-long descent. The last stretch of the climb is always the hardest. Bones and muscles ache, the air is thin, and each slow, arduous step requires maximum effort and concentration.
It really tested me, a lot more than I expected. I had to dig down deep and look for something extra that I wasn't sure was there. But it was, and I feel great.
Taking on this kind of challenge really changes you. It's not really like anything else I've ever done. It's really hard and it's really incredible.
Even though we climbed as a group, I think this is a very personal experience. It's not so much between you and the mountain as it is between you and yourself.
After nearly 10,000 feet of climbing, through howling winds, bitter cold, and treacherous terrain, the climbers achieve the summit. They have met the challenge of the great mountain, and now the mountain gives its very special reward, a sunrise at the top of the world.
All right. All right. Yeah. Give another hug, Patrice. Jeffrey! The old guys made it.
Those who climb Mount Rainier become part of an elite group of adventurers, people who have pushed themselves to the limit in order to experience nature in its pure, undisturbed state. John Muir, the father of the American conservation movement, was also a member of this elite group. After reaching Rainier's summit in 1888, he wrote,
"Of all the fire mountains which, like beacons, once blazed along the Pacific coast, Mount Rainier is the noblest."